Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Karen Goodfellow. I'm the Director of Public Art in the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. And in that capacity, I lead the city's public art initiatives and also act as the Director of the Boston Art Commission. Final decisions about public art projects on city property are always made by vote by the Board of the Art Commission at public meetings like this one. I'd like to welcome everyone to the March meeting of the Boston Art Commission. Artworks proposed for City of Boston property are reviewed at public meetings held by the Boston Art Commission. The Art Commission is an independent board composed of 2 ex officio and 7 appointed volunteer arts and design professionals that hold public meetings through and staffed by the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture to review and vote on matters concerning the city's art collection. Meetings are generally held on the 2nd Tuesday of each month to review current public art projects cited on or proposed for City of Boston property. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this meeting virtually. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the Boston Art Commission, the public may access this meeting through telephone and video conferencing, and we should also note that we are recording today's meeting. I'm joined by the Boston Art Commission staff working within the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture, Sarah Rodrigo, Public Art Project Manager, and Trisha Gilrain, Collections Manager, who will be helping to facilitate this meeting. And Trisha will add contact information to the chat. And I'll now hand it over to Chair Mark Pasnick and Vice Chair Aqua Holmes, who will call the meeting to order and go over some further instruction.
Thank you, Karen, and welcome everybody. I'm calling this public meeting to order at 4:03 p.m. Today, the Boston Art Commission will be holding its monthly public meeting. I will now take the roll call of commissioners to confirm a quorum. After I state your name, please say here. Aqua Holmes.
Here.
Camilo Alvarez.
Here.
Cara Elliott Ortega.
Here.
Brian Hone.
Here.
Michael Canizzo.
Here.
Lisa Tung.
Here.
Robert Freeman.
Here.
John Andres.
Here.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We have a quorum officially. We can begin the meeting. I believe somebody needs to silence. Okay, there, great. The commission staff wish to provide some instruction on using this platform. That instruction will occur later in the meeting when we come to the point where we have a chance for the public to make comments. We will be following the publicly posted agenda, which you can see on the next slide, I believe. And this agenda will begin with the director's report and then move on to presentations for public review. At the time of presentations later in the session, we'll provide you with information about how you as members of the public can participate in the conversation. We will now review the meeting minutes from the previous February 23rd meeting of the Boston Art Commission. Are there any comments or modifications that commissioners would like to make at this time? Hearing none, I wonder if we could have a motion to approve the minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Thank you, Robert. Are there?
Seconded.
Lisa, thank you for the second. So I will go through the roll call again and just say yes if you agree or no if you don't. Aqua Holmes.
Yes.
Camilo Alvarez.
Yes.
Cara Elliott Ortega.
Yes.
Brian Hone.
Yes.
Michael Canizzo.
Yes.
Lisa Tung.
Yes.
Robert Freeman.
Yes.
And John Andres.
Yes.
And I'm also a yes, so the motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Next up, I believe we have Karen's director's report. So Karen, take it away.
Mark. So we're gonna just go over some administrative concerns to start. So first up, we are really excited that some Community Preservation Act funds have been awarded. So the Community Preservation Act funds projects across the City of Boston in 3 categories: historic preservation, affordable housing, and open space. 69 projects were approved by the Community Preservation Committee this year, including 3 project sites, which will include public art under the open space category. The Douglas Plaza is a project we've been working on collaboratively for some time. I can't remember how many years it's been, but I think you've all seen it in some way over the years, but we've been working with many partners, including supporting a community-driven long-term memorial. As part of this support, we applied for these funds with the CPA to develop a new plaza in Roxbury at the intersection of Tremont and Hammond Streets. This plaza will house the legacy of Frederick Douglass, a memorial sculpture group honoring Douglass, his son, Lewis Henry Douglass, and the suffragist Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. The artwork is sculpted by Mario Chiodo with after a drawing by Paul Goodnight, and it was commissioned by the Frederick Douglass Sculpture Committee. The plaza design is by Sasaki Associates, and that initiative was awarded $400,000 in CPA funds. Out of, I think we applied for $700,000, just to give some sense of the budget. The Coconut Grove Memorial, another project in which we are partnering with a community group on the artwork, was proposed as an improvement to Statler Park in Bay Village and was awarded $250,000 in CPA funds. And lastly, a proposed renovation to Cripe Park, located on Columbus Ave and West Canton Street in the South End, received $250,000. Cripe Park honors Boston artist Alan Rowan Cripe. We've had preliminary conversations with the project proponent. It's still very early in development, but the updated park may include an interpretation of one of Cripe's artworks. Okay. And next, under administrative, we have the Embrace. As you know, later in this meeting, we'll be conducting the final design review for the Embrace. The presentation will include artwork design, as well as fabrication and installation plans and preliminary maintenance plans. As always, a vote of approval of the BAC is on the plans as they will be shared today. And if there are significant changes, the proponent will return for another review and vote. This is totally normal and allows for natural project changes and is the reason we do staff fabrication checks and updates to you. In preparation for our review, and as we discussed at length at our June meeting, I think it was, we've been working to finalize a memorandum of understanding with King Boston via the Boston Foundation. King Boston via TBS Legal Counsel this morning sent us the latest edits to the MOU and related exhibits, including the addition of a placeholder for an exhibit to the deed of gift that will describe any exceptions or restrictions on the assignment of rights. As currently drafted, we believe the MOU and deed of gift meet the city's and BAC's expectations and needs and are looking forward to signing. However, when voting to approve, we should understand what we are voting on. And right now it's up in the air with intellectual property rights, the exceptions and restrictions that are yet to be clarified. I recommend that if you decide to vote to approve the Embrace for final design, that the Commission consider being explicit that the final design vote is contingent upon receiving the rights described in the MOU Exhibit A as currently drafted or substantially similar, and that if there are changes, they will have to come back for another vote as they would with any other significant changes to the proposal. And next we have long-term projects. We'll just very quickly give a quick update just to keep you apprised of these projects. Long-term projects are projects that are going to be installed for 5 years or more. And these are all city commissioned projects. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago, so not much has changed. And as you'll see here, Matthew Hinsman's project at the JP Library, Curtis Hall campus is still underway and will be completed in spring 2021. 2 weeks ago, this commission approved Monica Bravo's preliminary design for the East Boston Police Station. She's now working on final design. And as part of that work, she's hosting a series of workshops over the weekend of March 12th, 13th, and 14th. So that's coming up this weekend. And we're adding a link to the registration form in the chat if anyone is interested in attending. And as you can see, that's what the blue file is there. And she is really passionate about her project and philosophy, and it's going to be a really great conversation with her. Two projects are in final design, and 5 projects are now in preliminary design phase. And you'll see the preliminary design proposals for both Boston Arts Academy projects later in this meeting. And I think, Tricia, did you share the East Boston Workshop sign-up sheet, sign-up form? Great. And then 2 other projects at the Roxbury branch of the Boston Public Library are in contracting phase. We're hoping to finish one of them up very soon. We hope to have those artists under contract and working on their preliminary designs in March. Additionally, the artist selected for the Ruggles Corridor Integrated Art Project is beginning the contracting process. One project is in artist selection phase, the Adams branch of the Boston Public Library, which we anticipate bringing you soon. And finally, we'll be releasing several calls, City Hall Plaza Engagement Center in Newmarket, and a gateway commission for the Ruggles corridor, as well as a citywide mural call are coming up very soon. And just a quick update on existing projects, Wind on Water by Lyman Whitaker and organized by the Navy Garden Association will be extended through October 2021. Because of circumstances related to COVID-19, the Navy Yard Garden Association plans to extend the Wind on Water exhibition so that the public has the opportunity to view the exhibit during warmer months. The exhibit was originally meant to be deinstalled on May 31st, 2021, and the installation is composed of groups of kinetic wind sculptures by artist Lyman Whitaker and installed at various locations in the Charlestown Navy Yard. The map on the left indicates all 8 locations. The Navy Yard Garden Association has been monitoring the condition of the installation throughout the winter and repairing and replacing sculptures as necessary to maintain the installation through to its new deinstallation date. Hallie Pinta, Director of the Navy Yard Garden Association, is here today to answer any questions you may have, but this is a project we approved, and I think for very understandable reasons, they would like to extend the installation. And lastly, we'll be moving on to presentations for review. And on this slide, you'll see a preview of the 3 projects we'll be reviewing today. Memory Diffusion by Masari Studios and The Creative by Donovan and Olmsted will both be installed at the Boston Arts Academy. Both projects are long-term city-driven projects, meaning that the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture and Art Commission released the call to artists, are providing funding and project management, and are acting as the project proponent, asking the Art Commission for approval today. And we'll also review the final design for The Embrace by Hank Willis Thomas, launched as a collaboration between the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture and the Boston Art Commission and King Boston. King Boston and the Boston Foundation are providing funding and project management and are acting as a project proponent, asking for Boston Art Commission approval today. And with that, I will pass back to you, Mark and Ava.
Thank you, Karen. So we will now move on to the portion of our public meeting that has an agenda for review, public testimony, and commission vote. You will notice at the bottom of the screen there are instructions for public testimony, which Aqua and I will now review with you. The next slide, please. Here is how you can participate in today's meeting when the time is appropriate, when either Aqua or I opens up for public commentary. During the meeting, please keep yourself muted. If you have technical difficulties during the meeting, you can ask questions in the chat and a member of staff will help you. After presentation and commissioners clarifying questions, the chair and vice chair, myself and Aqua, may invite public testimony. If you would like to participate, you can press the raise your hand icon and staff will put you in a digital line for comment. You can also let the staff know that you have a question in the chat. If you're calling in, press *9 to raise your hand. Please remember to keep your comments on topic and brief.
So our goal is to make this meeting a good experience for all so that community members will feel comfortable sharing their feedback and questions. Be mindful of and respectful of other people's time when speaking so that all the participants feel comfortable adding their comments. You can submit longer written testimony to bac@boston.gov. Now, while you may disagree with some other attendees' testimony, please do not interrupt them during their allotted time, and please keep questions and comments project specific. If you are called on, please state your name, title, program, or organization if applicable. And we ask please to not use any pejorative, ableist, or otherwise abusive language in your comments. Sarah Rodrigo, Public Art Project Manager, has been working with Masari Studios and Donovan and Olmsted, as well as project partners, as they develop their preliminary designs for their respective sites at the Boston Arts Academy. As Public Art Project Manager, she works closely with our commissioned artists from contracting to project closeout. She will now provide you with some project context and introduce the artist teams, both of which are joining us tonight to present their preliminary designs. Sarah?
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Holmes.
The Boston Arts Academy was founded in 1998 when a group of educators, parents, and community members recognized the need for a dedicated arts high school in the Boston public school system. BAA, as it's known, is Boston's only public high school for the visual and performing arts and provides a diverse student body, a majority from low-income families, access to a college preparatory arts and academic education. The school's mission is to prepare a community of aspiring artists/scholars/citizens to be successful in their college or professional careers and to be engaged members of their communities. This innovative arts and academic curriculum yields impressive results. In 2017, the Massachusetts School Building Authority and the Boston City Council approved $125 million to construct a new state-of-the-art facility at 174 Ipswich Street, which you can see in these images is in the Fenway neighborhood. The Fenway neighborhood is a high-traffic, dynamic intersection of culture, education, and recreation in Boston. There are over a dozen institutions of higher learning within walking distance of the site, major museums in close proximity, and Fenway Park, as you can see on the upper left and in the map on the lower right, is across the street from the BAA site. The new building is designed by Perkins Eastman and Wilson Butler Architects, and the project is managed by our colleagues in the Public Facilities Department, some of whom I think may be here tonight. It will feature dedicated rehearsal and performance spaces, gallery space, studios for music, visual arts and fashion design, academic classrooms, recreation areas, kitchens, and student commons. In September of 2019, the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture and the BAC released a call to artists for 2 new public artworks for this facility. The review committee, which included staff and student representatives from BAA alumni, as well as Commissioner Freeman, and former Commissioner George Fifield, recommended that the BAC commission 2 artist teams, Masari Studios for the interior artwork and Donovan and Olmsted for the exterior artwork. Those teams were approved by this commission in March of 2020, and both are here today to present their preliminary designs. The first presentation will be from Masari Studios. Masari Studios is an interdisciplinary artist collective reconsidering environments through site-specific installations using sound, light, interactivity, and performance. Based in Boston, the studio's practice includes live performance, electronic music and production, facade projection mapped video, artistic research, technologies and materials fabrication, and the expansive use of animation. The studio is artist-owned and managed and was founded in 2015. I'll now hand it over to Ryan Edwards, principal of Masari. Ryan, welcome.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, commissioners, fellow artists, and the public who's here on behalf of myself at Masari and my colleague Caleb Hawkins, who's here with me as well. Thank you, and we'll get to it. So this is, of course, for the Boston Arts Academy, and I'll start with a quick narrative of this project and the philosophy behind it. It is a monumental media sculpture confronting ideas of memory through real-time and recalled environmental sampling. It's based on this idea that remembering the past is not fundamentally different from imagining a potential future. I'll come back to that idea as we get into the piece. The working title is Memory Diffusion. Our work will create an observational perspective of an area of the BAA building and the people who pass through it. It's not a memory of the people nor a memory of the building, rather a memory developed by the piece as its own unique experience. As students, when time in high school is evolution, growth, learning, and changing, a brief moment, a state of becoming and evolution. Inspired by the French philosopher Henri Bergson, his writings on time, memory, and self, Our piece establishes and explores a memory of this space, recognizing that remembering the past is not fundamentally different than imagining a potential future. Memory diffusion. Situated inside the main entry area and grand stairway of the Boston Arts Academy, the piece is comprised of a monumental display screen and a number of echoing, illuminated, and related architectural elements or lighting elements that are decreasing in size and ascend the stairs. You can see dimensions of the screen here and the echoes as they ascend what is both a bleacher stair and a functional stair. It's a little bit of a closer look at what these echoes and the dimensions of the piece overall. Here you can see the situation of the piece inside of this area. Where the small 3D dude is standing is essentially a stage area, a multi-purpose general area. To the left of where the screen is the building's cafeteria. So this is quite a central location, and to the left of the piece also is a grand entrance, one of the main entrances to the building. In this orientation, oh, can you go back one? Thanks, Sarah. I'll address a couple of things about the materials and methods, and we can get into that later if there are more questions. The piece itself is an LED screen. It's a front serviceable series of LED panels. Those will all be situated behind a fire-rated construction fabric that's a diffusion material. So that is something that is a deterrent to vandalism, cleanable, and also diffuses the light so that we don't have bare LEDs at the close proximity to a viewer. The whole thing is set inside of an aluminum channel, and we have been discussing with the project managers, architects, and our media, the fabrication representative, ways to stay within ADA compliance, and so forth. I wouldn't say that all of those issues are resolved, but they've all been discussed and no major red flags have come up. The extending pieces in the sky, you'll note there's no resolved solution on how we hang those, but it has been discussed with the architects around a unistrut that might be placed above the acoustical baffles that are there with thread router cables, and the power and data addressing each of those individually. So again, not fully resolved in this design, but certainly under discussion and certainly seem feasible. Thanks, Sarah. A part of the piece are 3 cameras that are embedded in the piece. You'll see here one is just inside the trim of the main display area, and then 2 are inside 2 of those echo hanging elements. And the cameras provide a function that is driven by the idea of memory and Bergson's ideas about how memory is actually built, being these like samples or small slices of moments. And those all become aggregated and organized and recalled in a way in the philosophy and his philosophy about thinking about memory, and also in this piece. You can see in this next slide where the camera's viewing areas are. So directly onto that stage area, up to the landing at the top of the stairs, and then down the stairs. The system that we build will take all of these different slices of images and aggregate them, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later, but bring them all into a kind of ongoing, living, and aggregating long-term memory of this piece, really dealing with the people who, and the building as it is born into this moment, and students who come and go, all kind of leaving a lasting impression in this piece and something that gets recalled into the future. This is the basic, kind of flow chart of the information from the cameras into a server, and then out to both the lighting display and the screen. Here I can talk a little bit about how we're going to take those images and what it will actually look like. Here you can see on the far left a sample image that has been captured, for example, from an RGB camera, an extraction of the characters and the images in it, some processing, and then further processing to the right. You'll note that this is kind of like this idea of sampling and moving from a moment in time into an aesthetic representation of that then becomes replicated in the piece. In this presentation today, everything are still images that you'll be looking at, but of course, in real life, this is a display screen with moving images, video, and animation. Here are three working palettes that we're playing with that could very well be a look or a similar look in some of the aesthetic treatment as we process these images as they move towards the work. And then these next few slides are examples of what this will look like. You'll notice that the hanging, we call them echoes, as they kind of slice and move up the stairs as a memory is kind of sliced, are all driven by the same color palette. So if you go to the next one, Sarah, you'll see that my point here that those are actually a part of the same display orientation. And our interest is also that these not only are illuminated themselves, but that they actually start to illuminate some of the bare cement wall. So not only is the piece addressing, the display itself and this volume over the stairs, but also is in some analog color mixing on the wall. You can click to the next one too, Sarah, thanks. I think we have a couple of images that start to move us. Yeah, so you can see to the left, that's the grand entrance. So this is kind of a little bit of what it might look like to confront the piece as one enters the building, looks up the stairs. At that landing, looking back with these architectural, echoes kind of overhead. And you see, for those of you who aren't familiar with the interior of the building, there's of course this balcony. And I think the next piece, the next look here is from the balcony looking back at the piece. So you'd actually have a pretty interesting view, be pretty close to it from that second story, and then also see these repeating forms. We have a couple quick notes on public engagement, both working with the students and with the public at large. In the near term, we've offered master classes that have yet to be scheduled, but that are available for the teachers to help us be introduced to the students, expose our artwork in the process, and an invitation to participate with students at key points. We have a few specific ideas on that I can go into detail if there are questions later. In the long term, working with the students upon installation and activation is where I think our participation or integration with the students will really come to life. Part of our pitch for this project was that it isn't only just a resolved piece of art that we create, but it's also a display canvas that's open for student use. And part of what we will be creating in our server backend is a way for students and faculty at certain times to integrate their own work with this piece. And that's something we're really excited about. So we're interested in holding time and space for that kind of work to be done once the piece is built. Also, we have some interest to work with the public to debut the piece, perhaps in collaboration with students. As I mentioned, there's a small stage in front of the piece, and potentially we could have a dedication event and a performance open to the public. I think this next slide shows some of what that could look like at an evening setting. And here also you can see some of our vision for the lighting of those elements to be reflected on the wall. The schedule, this is a big building and the schedule has been shifting, but we're on track built upon the contract time arc. So I will show you here, this will just be very brief, but where we are now is March, and we're on track for design, development, prototyping, and build drawings. I won't go through all of this, but the bottom line is that we're prepared for the piece to be ready by the end of this year, installed if the building is ready in November and December, with tuning and so forth happening perhaps by the first of the year. That's the piece. I think that's our last slide, isn't it, Sarah? Yeah, thank you so much. It's an honor to present the piece, and thank you once again.
Aqua, do you want to?
I was just saying thank you with my computer muted, but thank you for that presentation, Ryan. Let's have some conversation. I think that's a pretty exciting proposal. I had one opening question, and then other commissioners that might have comments or questions or suggestions. And that is, in terms of the programming of the screen, is that something that the school will take over? How will that happen over the course of time?
By programming, you mean the actual content that is
Yes.
displayed in the screen? The primary content will be resolved through our preparation of the work with the ongoing input of those 3 cameras. So that is something that is built and evolves through the camera input as the primary function of the screen. So if there were to be no student or faculty input, it would be resolved and it would be a living artwork that continues. Our intention, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it would be a finite number of presentations that could cycle through.
Yeah, you could say that, a number of finite treatments, but the idea being that it actually is continually evolving and aggregating with this input from the cameras.
I see.
So it would really technically be infinite in the way that it presents itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there'd be opportunities for the students and the public potentially to program or use your programs to develop their own.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Thank you.
I have a technical, not a very, this is a beautiful presentation and very thoughtful. So I have a very mundane question about the where of the screen where it's very close to the end of the staircase. Like students walking by it with a backpack or something, or the potential for damage to the screen. I'm curious your thoughts on that, just in terms of right after you get off the staircase with the handrail, there's a screen pretty close there. So how are you thinking about that in terms of its long-term quality of appearance?
That's a good question. The working model is that the trim of this actually stands out quite proud of the screen itself. So the first thing that one would confront from either side would actually be on aluminum trim or something, properly rated for wear and tear. So that would be answer 1. And then answer 2 would be, as I mentioned, this Barrisol construction fabric that's a diffuser, but also a vandalism deterrent, and also a, what would we say, built to be managed as a surface, as a construction and wall surface. So that would be the second level of consideration.
Great. I'm seeing actually, Aqua, there may be some project partners here who would like to say a statement. Do we want to open it up to them first?
Someone from BPS, Carolyn, Evan, and Jim McQueen. Are you present and would you like to contribute to the conversation?
This is Jim McQueen. I just note that we're very happy with the way that this is progressing and looking forward to seeing it develop further.
Agreed. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that.
Okay.
I just wanted to add, Ryan, thank you for that presentation. It's as exciting as it was when we reviewed it the first time. We talked a little bit about the maintenance in the first session, and I was wondering if you all would be available if any of the electronics went down, or is that going to be the responsibility for the school?
That's a good question. And there's a number of different components. So I think that the responsibility of various components would be called out at handoff, whether that be warranty from a manufacturer, whether that be part of the artwork that we're responsible for, or the partner that we're bringing on, which is a Boston-based media solutions partner. So they would actually also be in charge of that. That's DCL, Design Communications Limited, who manages the marquee at the Boston Convention Center, the TD Garden, and so forth. So there's a number of representatives, and that will all be called out at the next stage or in the handoff about where that kind of responsibility begins and ends for each of the pieces.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yep. And being local, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing for us, is our pride in making sure that it does work, and also managing that handoff to the school so that it is, it's a major source of pride for us that it looks great always.
Thank you, Mastery. I think that was a lovely presentation, and it's going to be a great artwork. I also had concerns about the maintenance of it. As we know, technology always has a half-life. So perhaps besides the students participating with the actual work and activating it themselves, they can probably be also trained to perhaps maintain it themselves is probably an option. And then to think about also the cameras, you know, in order to replace a camera, what would be needed to get all the way up there? Probably try and make it as easy as possible for something to be replaced if broken.
Yeah, well, the consideration we've given, you know, first of all, address the cameras, is that those are actually, you know, part of the art piece and accessible. So we'll design that into it. And the working model is that it's a power over Ethernet cable run, so that if there is something wrong with that camera, it's actually kind of, what we would say, we wouldn't use the term future-proof, but it is considered that updates and replacements to that would be, would not require running new cable. Let me put it that way. So that's one level of consideration. And just like with anything that's hanging in a space like this, you know, a scissor lift or similar would be needed for that kind of repair or addressing of things. But we actually have walked away from more complicated cameras towards simple, you know, RGB cameras. So it's an affordable, robust item. And then finally, like on the tip of maintenance and understanding the piece, I think to the level that the faculty and staff and students are interested to be a part of kind of understanding how this works, we're ready to meet them there. And that's kind of what we presented and how we've shown up to the table. So we're really quite open and would love to see it not just be a piece, but become a part of a performing arts high school's canvas and concept of canvas. So we care about that quite a bit.
I'd also like to add, this is Sarah, that when we were negotiating the contract, we worked out some slightly different terms than our standard agreement, because this is a new media piece, to try and accommodate some of the maintenance concerns. And Tricia Gilrain, the art collections manager, and obviously our corporate counsel, and Anne Masari had a lot of good content to put in there. So these are questions that we've been talking about and we'll continue talking about as part of the actual artist agreement.
Hey, Ryan, thank you so much. This is great. I'm really excited to see this come to life. I had two questions, actually. One, the server, will that be on site? Will that be held by Masari or at a server farm? I'm just curious where that will live.
On site, its specific location to be determined, but in conversation with the project managers and facilities on an agreeable location.
Great. And then my second question was, as a student, say, descends the stairs, do you yet know what the time span is between the video capture and the activation on the screen? I'm just curious that, say, if you walk down the stairs, will you be able to turn around and immediately see the impact of your own body in that video work?
That's a great question. I think the first answer to that is that we've walked away from a constant one-to-one feedback, which is, I think, you know, we could say a bit all too common in this kind of work, towards something that has more mystery, to where at times, perhaps at the most congested times, you know, between classes, it is actually very tangible that this amount of activity is quite available. But in the times when the activity, perhaps there's a breath between classes, it starts to call up things from maybe a busier time, or perhaps from the day before, perhaps from a year before. So that kind of, the playback starts to become more like a memory or a daydream, rather than a specific feedback of an exact moment. I think the answer to your question is that at times, one would have a very specific reality that, like, we are in this, you know, the bright white backpack I have just moved across the screen. But that at many times it would also be kind of what you see here, of a manifestation of what memory might be to this piece.
Great, thanks, Ryan.
Ryan, I had a question. You kind of talked about it quickly about accessibility or how this is accessible to all folks. I'm just curious, what are some of the topics you're talking with and who are you talking with? The city's Disabilities Commission, or just to get a better sense of what are some of the issues? Because I'm a little concerned that if where the cameras are being aimed, that one has to descend or ascend the stairs, but if I'm in a wheelchair, that's not going to happen. So how would I be able to participate in this piece?
Sure, that's a great question. As far as we know from the discussions with the architect, the ramp that ascends, it might be hard to see here, but it's actually a ramp where the gentleman in this image, I don't know if gentleman's the right word, the subject is standing is actually a stage, let's call it, and it's accessible by ramp. So to get to where that person is accessible by wheelchair. And one of the 3 cameras is actually trained on that area. So that stage area is considered all access as far as we are aware. So it would be, as it stands now, able to be interfaced with someone with special needs, movement needs.
I'll jump in again. I'm sorry, Commissioner. We've also brought this for a very preliminary review to the Disabilities Commission just to get their eyes on it and get a little bit of feedback. This is preliminary design, so these conversations are still in development.
Okay. If someone is visually impaired, how would they be able to experience this piece? Is there going to be any sound? I know that was part of what your firm does. Is that something that's been discussed?
Sound has been discussed. We elected not to put forward a sound component to this for a number of reasons, not least of which being a long-term sound piece in a public common area can often be problematic. And also in a school area. So our intention was well, I'll leave that as the short answer. And then the second answer to your question is that we have not addressed perhaps a text-based accompaniment, that if someone were visually impaired, there could be something that was accessible. I think that's certainly worth noting, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I would strongly suggest that you consider that, so that everyone with their abilities can experience, because I think this is a very interesting piece and sort of fits with the Arts Academy, but I think it should be people should be fully allowed to experience what you're showing here.
Noted. Thank you.
I have a question from Dr. Pinder, who chatted me a question. She asks, has disruption of traffic on the stairs been taken into account, and asked about evidence from other projects?
That's a good question. It has been considered. I don't have evidence from other projects where we've had this kind of interactivity in this kind of a blended area. So I can't offer that. I would say 2 things. One, we've allowed ourselves to address the stairs because the design of the stairs is with this blended use of both traffic and it's a social area. This bleacher stair is designed for kind of blended use. So we've accepted that. And then secondly, our thoughts on the interactivity on the stairs is, while one is in that space, it's much more passive than where one would be if they were directly in front of the screen. Meaning that you might be inputting and be a part of what the cameras are capturing, rather than actually being like, I'm actively in it and I'm gonna stop on the stairs because I can see what's happening. So I don't know if that is clear, but basically the more direct interaction would happen on the level ground in front of the screen.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask if the sort of animation, if you will, that comes from this project can be used in other places. So I know a lot of institutions now have YouTube channels and things like that, and BAA has a lot of performances. Are those animations going to be available to show on other screens in other places, or as a staging backdrop, or any kind of programming?
That's a good question. I think my immediate answer would be that the expression of the piece would live in this space. Mm-hmm. So in as much as it was relative to this space, rather than offering an output and other use of the animation and, you know, the kind of aggregate expression of the piece, I think it would be most powerful. And I would say, at least at this time, we'd be most interested in it staying kind of within this piece and in this site.
Thank you. Okay, any other commissioner comments, questions? Then I think we'd like to open it up to the members of the meeting, the public. And if we could just go over that, you may submit comments or questions by raising your hand via the Zoom platform. Callers can dial 9 and a member of the BAC staff will put you in a digital line and call upon you when it's your turn. Please remember to state your name for the record and also keep yourself muted when not speaking. We'd love it if you could contain your comments to 2 minutes and just be mindful of that. And also, again, to stay on topic for this phenomenal proposal that we're looking at. So wait a few minutes to see if some folks sign up for comments, and then we'll get started.
We have Allison Cortinas on the line for a question or comment.
Well, Allison, let's get started then.
Okay, thank you so much. Just a couple kind of follow-ups to what your last comments were about. Wondering how long the images are retained on the screen and how long in the server. I mean, will this be a permanent record kept somewhere of all the images? And so that's one question. And also how long they stay on the screen, because depending if they're flashing by really fast, actually that could be somewhat irritating. So hopefully they linger a little bit. And I guess my second question is, I'm assuming there'll be some kind of MOU between the school and the studio as to future maintenance. So thank you.
Ryan, do you want to address the first part of that, and then maybe Sarah for the second part?
Sure. As far as the rate of images, I would say we haven't completely resolved all of the aesthetic expressions of the piece, but the how would I put it? Being that the piece is confronting memory in a possible future, and we realize that it is a long-term piece in a space, it is not meant to be a fast-moving or flashing piece. It is meant to be gentle and inquisitive and curious more than it is to be confronting. I would say that as a general overview. As far as the longevity of the records of these images and this memory that it builds up, that will be resolved between budget and server space. We will be designing a program that is meant to remember things from day one. And as the piece goes on, it will have to manage its ability to remember, just like we all do. So it will make some decisions at some point about what memories start to fade and what it keeps. And that is an exciting part of how we end up managing it.
Mm.
And
So
I could,
I was
sorry.
going to ask for a little clarification. So are you saying that at some point the computer program will say, well, I'm going to overwrite what happened on October 22nd in 2022 because what we're doing right now is more important? Is that sort of what you're building into this?
Something like that. I mean, we really are basing a lot of this on the opinions on how memory works fundamentally. So it really is slices and samples, and it could be very high fidelity slices and samples from a very, what the piece deems to be a very important time. It could be, 2 or 3 images per second over the course of an hour. And then it also then could at some point kind of say, you know what, really just need 2 or 3 of those for us to remember that, much like our memories, some people might say our memories work. So it might throw out 80 or 90% of that very dense memory set to just hold on to 4 or 5, and that would then again, create more space.
I'll just add that we are working with Masari about any privacy concerns, especially around students, recordings, videos, things of that nature. I think that might be part of what you were getting at, Commissioner. And those are definitely things that need to be considered and addressed. Is that helpful?
Yeah, and it's an interesting question or challenge to think about something like this and how one might program it over a period of time. So Allison, thank you for that question. And then I think the follow-up was about the MOU between the school and—
Right. So I can provide a little clarity, which is that the piece, when it's accessioned by this commission, will be in the collection of the Boston Art Commission. And as such, the BAC is responsible for the maintenance. There is, as I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, in artist agreement that the BAC has with Masari, there are some maintenance considerations, warranties, things of that nature. And as we move forward with the piece and it's, stays for many years, the BAC will be responsible for the maintenance of it. We wouldn't ask the school staff without an agreement between the BAC and the school to do any type of work on it. I think that that's something that Tricia Gilrain may be able to speak to more at future meetings, as well as we sort of move the project forward and develop these different maintenance plans, which is part of preliminary maintenance plan will be part of final design, which is the next milestone after this. And then once the piece is accessioned, there will be a maintenance plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in our queue, Patricia?
I don't see anyone with their hand raised right now, and I don't see anyone in the chat.
So then I think we could entertain a motion here to accept this preliminary design with some of the additions that we mentioned about further work. Is there anyone there that would like to put forth such a motion?
I will move that. Sure. So that we accept preliminary design approval. I move that we approve the preliminary design process here, and subject to continued conversation and input that was already presented today by the commissioners and public.
Seconded.
Awesome. Do you want to do the roll call, Mark? You're so good at it.
All right. Okay, let me go back to my list. It's always easier to look at the list.
That's what I needed.
So first, Camilo Alvarez.
Yes.
Cara Elliott Ortega.
Yes.
Brian Hone.
Yes.
Michael Canizzo.
Yes.
Lisa Tung.
Yes.
Robert Freeman.
Yes.
John Andres.
Yes.
Aqua Holmes.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. So the motion passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Ryan. And thank you for the presentation.
Right on, thanks. And I want to say thanks to my colleague Caleb. He's been central to this as well. So good stuff. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
And thank you. Nice to see you, Caleb. It's great to see you having an impact on the city.
Yeah, I've come a long ways.
Caleb was my student many years ago, so it's nice to see him out in the world.
Beautiful. Okay.
Okay, so our next preliminary design proposal is for the exterior of the Boston Arts Academy. Sarah will introduce the artist team of Donovan and Olmsted.
Thank you, Commissioner. Simon Donovan and Ben Olmsted, both coincidentally Boston born and raised, are currently residents of Tucson, Arizona. They're intimate with the Fenway neighborhood and relish the prospect of returning home and contributing artwork to this urban setting. They've worked together on public art commissions for 15 years. Each is a multimedia artist. They have over 25 past and current projects together. They combined forces when they realized the beneficial results of collaboration include strengthened ideas from an added perspective, thorough troubleshooting, and increased talents and additional familiarity with a variety of mediums. Their process is to distill the best solutions through discussion and debate. As collaborators, they've prospered from an exchange of ideas and technical information and have developed a complementary aesthetic sensibility, and they work for a unified approach. Welcome, Simon and Ben. I think I'll be handing it over to Ben now.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to present our idea today, and I'll hand it over to Simon.
Hi, I'm the big talker of the two of us. So, hi, I'm Simon Donovan, and as Sarah mentioned, we are both originally from Boston, and therefore we are just thrilled that we have this opportunity to kind of go home and create this piece. It's kind of been a long-held dream, and I also want to say that this project in particular has great meaning to me personally, as I had taught at an arts high school for 9 years, and so I know the value of an education like this at a really pivotal time developmentally, and that was just got us thinking about how we can create something, an exterior sculpture that would be both accessible and readily understood by the public, and somehow representative of a student in the process of learning about all different disciplines and all the creative possibilities ahead of them, and something that was also innovative and kind of striking in appearance. And I have to say, I'm actually kind of thrilled that Masari went first, because there was all this mention of slices, and that has a lot to do with our sculpture, and that's just a coincidence, but it's a wonderful tie-in. And so that's bringing the interior and the exterior together. So if we can go to the next slide, our sculpture is primarily based on this technique that we've used a number of times now, and that is the creation of form through creating slices of stainless steel. In this case, a Marin Foal. This is here in Tucson, which is where we are. And it is kind of topographic in appearance because of the planes. It's divided into planes by a computer-driven program, and then is cut into slices and then held apart, in this case, 1 inch on center apart by little rods. And what happens is this kind of I like to say a magical effect, so that it goes from one angle of being kind of a fully realized form to almost invisibility when you look at it straight on. And so this is kind of just a kind of a trick of the eye thing that we have found that the public has found incredibly engaging and interactive, and it's kind of a crowd pleaser. So, so this is, so what we were thinking about in terms of this sculpture for the school is something that is based on our past works. We had thought that we would like to create the head of a student. Let's go, oh yeah, this is fine. No, go back. Yeah, that's fine. A head of a student that's reflecting on creative possibilities, and you know, we especially thought that it would be looking at the demographics of the school, of diversity that's so prevalent, that a young girl of color seemed like the perfect subject for as a model for a head. And in thinking with that, we thought, well, we would like to have, you know, that particularly young Black women are underrepresented in public sculpture, representational sculpture. And we thought it was important to kind of remedy that in some small way by making a representation of a young Black girl contemplating her creative possibilities. And so in coming up with the appearance of this girl, we met with students, representatives from each class, and I presented a number of choices of various models. Models were easily accessible in terms of multiple views of their heads from different sides. And so a number of young women of color that were represented, and with the student body, we discerned which one they felt was most representative in the kind of pose and kind of beauty that they wanted to see. We felt it was important to celebrate beauty. And so this model in particular, Nikor Paul, was the chosen model by the students for the kind of basis for which we started modeling. So next. And so in the process, the way this is done is that we start creating 3D modeling of a head. And I would like to say this is still one of the initial stages. Well, it's pretty finalized, but there's been some tweaks. She's a little bit more serene looking, a little bit happier looking, just minor tweaks that, but those things count. And this is the basis of the head. And so we start here, and then through computer-driven software program, we are able to then, next, divide it into planes. And the other thing that we wanted to do to make this a step up for our own work, an evolution of our own work, and also another point of engagement, and to make it a little bit more magical, is that we decided that we would make these not just out of solid planes of stainless steel, but perforated planes of stainless steel. So these currently we have 1-inch holes. It's about 52% open area. And so what you'll see is from the side, directly from the side, you'll get a kind of moire pattern. That's, I don't know if people are familiar with this, but when you put one perf surface in front of another, you have this kind of interactive thing that happens visually. And it creates this waving illusion and a moire pattern that's kind of mesmerizing. And so you'll have this invisibility from the front, full realized form from like a 3/4 view. And then from the side, you'll have another element of invisibility that allows you to look inside of her head. And that's where, so here's a view from, I think that's the back of the head. And it's kind of just, you can see it's a kind of, and that's like a 3/4, and that's the front of the head. No, keep going. Yeah, that's the front of the head. And so it's kind of this vibratory thing that's going on. Okay, so next. Okay, so here's the other element of student participation. We decided that we would have these symbols inside of the head that would be revealed upon close scrutiny. So you'd have, like on the left, you see this kind of moire pattern, those like white spots that are like kind of vibratory that move. And then, but as you get closer, you can look inside of the head and there'll be symbols of the various artistic disciplines that are taught at the school. So it'd be it dance or fashion or filmmaking or painting, there'll be different symbols that will represent those activities. And the students, we're engaging the students to actually come up with those symbols that will be essentially silhouettes that are cut out of stainless steel and will be in a plane in the center of the head in the brain cavity. The construction of the head is that the center is essentially hollow. There's like it's like an 8-inch kind of band of layers that are, creating this kind of form. Next. So this is, again, seeing it like straight on from the side and then straight on from the front. So there's the slices and the perforation. And so that we're seeing this as being 8 foot tall on a 8-inch pedestal with lights that are set into the base as well. The pedestal is approximately 7 feet by 7 feet. Next. And so, yeah, so here's an example. Just, you know, these are just kind of plop-ins. The students will actually be coming up with the symbols that they feel are best representative, and we will work with them to kind of refine them or direct them. So it's, and I'm really looking forward to this aspect, because I miss engaging with this population. And you know, in the past, when I first started my public art career, I actually involved students in making some public art projects. And it was, I think, really not just rewarding for me, but really rewarding for them to have a kind of pride of ownership and involvement, and can also open up an avenue for their future artistic discipline. So next. And here's another cross section of just kind of what it would look like. Next. And here's a, you know, it will be a kind of a slow reveal, but you'll see a sense of these shapes inside the head. Okay, yeah, yeah, you can stay there. This is just in a construction site, which I guess the high school is under right now. But so this is kind of gives you an idea of this kind of lacy effect. We want it to have a kind of ethereal quality, and these computer modelings don't really give you the exact kind of nature of the stainless steel, the shininess of it, and the kind of the play of light that's going to happen on the surface that will actually be really enriching. Next. And so what we're doing currently is we're doing some samples to test readability and transparency. And if Ben could hold up, so you can see we, you know, this is, we cut out some planes from the head. And
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
Those four on the lower right, there's the 4 planes. So those are layers that are actually represented here. And I put them together. This thing's pretty heavy, so I might be struggling a little bit, but you can see the pins that are holding, that are offsetting the layers. And you can see the perforations, and you can see how it is also transparent from the side. The holes line up, so you can really see in there. And the other aspect of this that you can't really see with those renderings, it's not really included with the renderings, is this is the surface this represents the surface of the sculpture, which is outlined with a solid kind of margin, i.e. the holes don't go all the way to the edge, which would create a really sharp surface that wouldn't be great for, you know, tactile touching. Whereas these layers, you know, have this margin, so you have a smooth edge. And that also is really going to be great for showing the details of the face. On those renderings, much like the horses that we showed you in the beginning, every inch on center is going to be outlined. And you'll also, because it's transparent, you'll also be able to see these on the other side of the head. So, you know, you could almost see the other side of the head from you know, the side that you couldn't normally you wouldn't be able to see. So I think it's going to be really interesting because of these outlines.
Yeah.
And then on the inside of this would represent the inside of the shell. This is where our different symbols would be, and that remains unoutlined. So that just becomes just a more of a blurry end of the surface, whereas this is much more concrete.
One of the things
I'm going to put this thing down now because it weighs about 40 pounds.
Yeah, well, that's the thing I wanted you to get a sense of, is just how durable, how strong and kind of beefy this is as, you know, as a material.
Yeah, one thing that I was worried about, if we were going to remove so much material without those holes, I was worried that it might become almost too lacy and not really have enough integrity, but it is really, really stiff and really strong. So it's going to work really well.
Okay, so we're going to move on quickly, I guess. So let's go to the next. This is an example of a past project, and it's we wanted to make reference to this just in terms of actually maintenance issues. So this is a large Poet's Head in Tucson, Arizona, next to a streetcar stop, a pretty busy urban area. The only kind of detritus that's kind of affected is small mesquite tree leaves that kind of fall into it occasionally. This is very porous, so these are all laser cut, thousands of laser cut stainless steel letters in the design of a refrigerator magnet, and it's called Poet, and it's near the Poetry Center at the University of Arizona. And so this has, it has a lot of holes, basically. And essentially what we have found is that like once a year, it just needs to be blown out with like a leaf blower or compressed air. And that's essentially the only thing that it needs. And primarily because the lighting is inside the base of this. Whereas on the sculpture that we're describing now, the lighting will be on the outside. So here it is lit at night, lit with blue LEDs. I want to show just quickly some slides of what we proposed for the lighting. This is an example of a sculpture that we did in New Orleans in front of the University Medical Center that's also made out of stainless steel. But with LED lighting, of amber colored lighting, you create a golden surface at night. And I think that could be also quite beautiful. Next. And so these are kind of possibilities of what it's going to look like. So this is, it's kind of tough to do in 3D renderings, but this is kind of, so essentially she'll become golden at night. Next. And one of the things like Ben was mentioning, if you could go back, we'll go to the next one. Here it is in kind of in situ. So, you can see that, as you're walking along, this will be this illuminated golden head. Next. And here, like this actually kind of nicely describes the interference patterns that happen with both the moire and the slices, and the outlines of the things will create almost like this weird patterning sometimes on her face.
As you move around her, the moire pattern really will pop. It'll be like a vibrating, mesmerizing kind of appearance.
Next. So here it is also in sight. So right now it's projected to be at the corner. And so you'll actually have, and if you go to the next slide, I think we can see more of the intersection. So it's like there's many angles coming in, and you'll be able to see it from many venues. I also want to point out that it's kind of diagonally across from Fenway Park's representational sculptures of the white ball players. And this is kind of a nice counterpoint of kind of a traditional bronze and this kind of innovative kind of representation of a young woman. And we feel really strongly that this is kind of the involvement of the computer, which has liberated our hand in some ways and broadened our possibilities in terms of creating with CNC-driven lasers. It's really kind of remarkable, the kind of possibilities, and we feel like this is really, has a lot to do with the school, and the school as in terms of a creative process and as in terms of the future. So I think that might be, yeah, here's another close-up. So I think that might be it.
Okay, thank you. I want to open it up to any comments from commissioners, unless there's some partners that would like to say a brief word. Okay, no. Since there isn't, we can open up to commissioner comment. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners?
Yeah, I have just a comment, and it's really Ben and Simon for such a great presentation. And I remember the initial presentation, we weren't sure as to what the head would look like in terms of the features. And I really appreciate your collaboration with the students to come up with the features of an African-American woman. I think that's going to mean so much to the school and so much to everyone who passes by. Thank you.
I have two brief comments myself. Is that I'm very glad to hear that you're going to work with students on the elements inside, the symbolic elements. I would encourage you to make them as as rewarding as the figure itself, because I think right now they're clip art, and that would be nothing. I think the pressure to be symbolic and legible might need to be weighed against the artistry of the pieces themselves. So I'm sure if you've worked with students for 8 years, you have a good way to manage that. But it'd be nice to see those be something compelling that you discover through the work itself. And my second comment, maybe because this is preliminary, it's just sort of opening up a question as whether this location at the busy intersection, at a point where the building really doesn't feel very much like a front, it's not perhaps the best moment in the building, whether the artwork feels a little lost in that space. And I wonder if it's the ideal location. It's very prominent, very visible. I think those are all great features of it, but I worry that it, maybe in the next round when you present to us, you can show us a little bit more detail about its location and how it will feel like a place that people might gather rather than just walk by or have, connection to the piece in a less incidental fashion that I worry a, major intersection might be.
Yeah, I kind of see it as like being on the bow of a ship. It's like the figurehead, but yeah, I hear what you're saying.
I was going to add to Mark's comment. It'd be nice if we could get a plan view so we understand where it's being placed along the sidewalks. I know the city is planning to redo Van Ness, and just curious to see how this fits into the overall plan that's going on. And there's a service entrance for the Fenway Theater, basically across the street. So it would be helpful to get a bigger idea of how this placement is in the bigger sort of block context of what's going on across the street. To Mark's comment about where it's being placed in front of the building, because I think this is a wonderful piece. I'm excited by it. I just worry about it. It's going to get clipped by something or whatever. So I think no more we know about its placement, I think would be helpful.
I'll just jump in here and say it's Sarah again. Commissioner, we have done some preliminary conversations with the PIC, with Disabilities Commission, and looking at tweaking the siting of the pieces, as well as looking at PFD's schedule for construction and clearances. There's not a lot of space to work within, but the placement is still kind of in some levels of discussion in terms of both maintenance and interactions and visibility of the piece and around it. So I think there'll be a lot more information at the next review for sure, and things may change a bit, but we didn't narrow in per se for this presentation because there are still some questions around the exact placements, if that's helpful.
We could review that, yeah, in the next, when it comes before final review. That would be good to put that on the agenda. Any other comments from commissioners before we open it up to any public comments? Oh,
yeah, I have a couple. Well, one, just to add on to what we're recently talking about, are there other options for placement is a question, doesn't have to be answered now. And what I like about this piece is it sort of hints at this Afrofuturism idea, the way that the light hits it, the grid, the idea of looking into someone's head and seeing creativity. So I really like those aspects of it. I wanted to echo what Mark said about the symbols, and maybe even suggest that the symbols don't have to be symbols. They could be, it could represent a feeling of creativity rather than I'm a painter, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a dancer, that kind of thing, because the head itself, I mean, if we were to look inside of our brains, we would not see that. We would see something much more ephemeral and beautiful and all that kind of stuff. So just want to echo what Mark said about working with the students. The students at BAA are so creative that I don't think it will be a problem, but just want to say that we definitely want to move away from clip art or things that are very rigid, because if you think about, the future of the arts, it's involving technology and all these other things that can't be sort of constrained into a symbol. I thought that when I was looking at your model, the brown modeling, I thought that the model looked old.
Yeah.
For high school, to represent a high school student. It seems to me less so in your renderings in the metal, but in those first renderings, I thought that person's like 25, 28, and
Yeah.
so I would like for you to take, take another look at that. And I wonder if some of it is just, you're working from a photograph as opposed to working from a person. So I just wanted to put that out there. And those were my questions / comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to respond to the thing about age, I agree that the refinement that we've done since then has like a less furrowed brow. It just, softened things a little bit so she looks younger. But also the features and the characteristics do have to be somewhat stronger defined in the original modeling, because things do get kind of watered down and softened by cutting it into planes. So there's kind of like this finding the happy medium.
And so the front will be those bands will be the defining things in the front. Okay.
Yeah.
Any last comments before we open it up to see if there's a few public comments?
I just had a question, Mark.
Go ahead, Brian.
Just thinking about if you've done any kind of prototyping with the kind of symbols inside the head and kind of what that will look like. I'm also kind of considering the readability of those symbols. If, we're dealing with the surface of the planes and then that surface is also perforated, it just seems kind of visually busy and wondering how readable anything in the actual kind of interior space of that head will be.
Yeah,
It would be great to kind of see some prototypes of what that could look like, or images of that as we kind of head to like a final design review.
Sure. That's what we're working with now. And that's why we actually created that prototype, to look at the size of the holes and kind of compare and see what things about readability. And so we'll continue with that for sure. But there is also the aspect that we want it to be kind of a slow reveal, or something that happens upon scrutiny. So you might not automatically see it from a distance. We wouldn't want it to be that much of an interference or look like something's wrong with it, but it's something that when you get upon scrutiny, so that it's rewarding close up as well as at a distance. So that's kind of like something that's revealed to the viewer when they're right up against it.
Okay, so thank you. Any other comments? Otherwise, it looks like.
I had one comment, and I want to apologize in advance for the crassness of this comment. But I'm going to suggest that the school and the artists, they want to take an approach to whenever the Red Sox will get in the World Series, and the rush will be to put a hat on this piece in order to support the Red Sox, or maybe the Patriots or something. I would think that would diminish from the piece, and I would suggest that maybe you think how that may not take place, because I could very well see it. I see it happen in Chicago with the Lions in front of the Art Institute and other things. So I just want to, and again, I apologize for having this thought, but I could see this very well happening, and would suggest if you could take measures to prevent that.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
And I think those are things you can consider as you go forward. Thank you. Let's open it up to, it looks like we have Allison would like to make a comment as well. Allison?
Thank you. And to follow up on kind of semi-vandalism questions, I'm thinking it also, there might be tagging that might happen to the sculpture, and just to be thinking about how that can be prevented or how it would be cared for. But this is a different question is, she has her eyes closed, and I'm assuming is that because she's supposed to be dreaming? It feels a little strange to me to see her with her eyes closed. Thank you.
No, I think it was like closing and imagining, kind of daydreaming, dreaming, yes.
I would just suggest it to have her look alert. To me seems would be more meaningful, because I don't know, sometimes having your eyes closed looks like you're could be a victim. I don't know, it just looks a little, I just feel like it might be more relevant to have her eyes open.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments before we move on to a motion here? Okay, hearing none, thank you, Allison, for commenting. And I think that you've heard a number of things that you should be considering in move towards a final approval, but we are at the preliminary approval stage. Do I hear a motion on the floor to offer preliminary approval with a desire to see some of the questions and comments responded to?
So moved.
Thank you, Robert. Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
Okay, great. Who won that second?
Lisa did.
Okay, Lisa, you get
Thank
to be
you.
second. All right, I will read off the roll call and ask for your vote. Aqua Holmes,
I'll say yes.
Camilo Alvarez,
Yes.
Michael Canizzo,
Yes.
Cara Elliott Ortega,
Yes.
John Andres,
Yes.
Brian Hone,
Yes.
Lisa Tung,
Yes.
Robert Freeman,
Yes.
and I'm yes as well. So congratulations, that's unanimous preliminary approval. Thank you very much for joining us. Now we move on to our final project, and I will be recusing myself. So Aqua will take over the chairmanship, or chairpersonship, sorry, for the remainder of the meeting.
All right, we are now going to have a presentation from Hank Willis Thomas on the final design for the Embrace, the monumental sculpture that's coming to the Boston Common, commemorating the Kings, Coretta Scott and Martin Luther King Jr. and their connection to Boston, their work in Boston, their lives in Boston, as well as their impact internationally. So Hank, I'm going to turn the floor over to you and any partners, or Imari, perhaps I'm turning it over to you, but to the team, you have the floor.
Hi, Commissioner Holmes. Great seeing you.
Good to see you too.
I wish I was as handsome as Hank Willis Thomas, although Hank is here. So there he is. He's masked up. I'm not as handsome as Hank. He has to wear a mask. He's so handsome. I'm so happy to be here this evening. You know, this has been a process for all of us. A few years ago, this was conceived a memorial for Dr. King, and it has evolved to a memorial for Dr. and Mrs. King, other Boston civil rights leaders, a institute, and an ideas festival. And I think in this moment in time, in the year that we've had last year, Boston is ready to open itself with new values of equity, anti-racism, and inclusion. And I'm so excited to be here partnering with the BAC, the city, our partners, Hank Willis Thomas, and the Mass Design friends. And so I'm going to just give us a really quick recap of where we are in the process. and Sarah, I'm just gonna go fast because they told me I had 5 minutes, and my team told me I talked too much. And so you guys remember that the Kings were here in the 50s, and so they like many other students came to Boston to go to school, and we imagine a day, a universe where Boston was a different place. It was a friendlier, more welcoming place that the Kings could stay, and Boston would ultimately be the epicenter of the civil rights movement in the country. And so that didn't happen. But 56 years later, since the King's last visit to Boston, we have that opportunity to do that, and the Embrace is a part of that opportunity. And so when we think about this whole period in Boston's civil rights movement, we think of a larger period, not only the 65 Freedom Rally when King returned, but this larger period from 63 to 67. And so I'm going to go quickly and just shout out a couple of the legacy heroes, some icons of Boston, who we will also want to honor and remember during this time period, and ultimately commemorate in some way through this. I think the slides are okay. There we go. So we want to honor and remember Reverend Haynes, Ruth Batson, Reverend Reeve, and it seems like the slides are a little off kilter. I don't know if you're seeing that as well.
Yes.
Okay. Reverend Wood, and I say that because I don't want you to think that we're using capitals in lower and uppercase at different. I think the font changed up, so we're using capitals in upper and lower cases properly. But Reverend Wood, we want to honor. Otto and Muriel Snowden. Reverends Breeden and Carter. Margaret Mosley. Sarah Ann Shaw. Reverend Davis. Reverend Carter. And last but not least, Mel King and Hubie Jones. And so when we think about this moment in time, we started a few years ago thinking about just building a memorial for Dr. King, and this quote, which I'll take a second to read, has us thinking about what it means for Boston to be the epicenter of the civil rights movement, has us thinking about what it means for Boston to build a memorial for the King. And this quote from the 1965 Freedom Rally when he was at the Parkman Bandstand illustrates this moment in time for us. It would be irresponsible of me to deny the crippling poverty and injustice that exists in some sections of this community. The vision of New Boston must extend into the heart of Roxbury. Boston must be a testing ground for the ideal of freedom. And so this is one of the archives from the Freedom Rally. And so when we think about what it means to build a memorial from the Common to Nubian Square, we understand that that centering is important in this moment in time. And so to build a memorial in Boston's oldest park in its historic center is incredibly important, as it is to build a center, a research center, the King Center for Economic Justice, in the geographic center of Boston, Nubian Square, as well as the center of Black Boston. And so when we think about the entire King Boston initiative, we think about this holy trinity in which these 2 points of the map are incredibly meaningful for us. Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening to the slides. It's a little bit overlapped from my view.
I apologize, Amari. It looks like we had some import issues. Would you like to go back or?
Mari, I think this was where you were going to talk about the engagement process prior to selection of Hank.
Yeah, so just to talk about a little bit about the process. So when we initially imagined the Embrace, or a monument to honor Dr. King, we decided that Boston needed to do this differently because of our history and our reputation. It was important that we had a process that was as inclusive as we possibly could have it. And some of you who are a part of this audience have participated as a part of our process. So we had 14 community meetings when we were trying to determine where and what this memorial should be. There were 126 submissions from nationally and internationally renowned artists. The proposals were displayed at the Bowling Building and the central branch of the Boston Public Library. And through a panel of experts, we ultimately landed on this amazing piece by Hank Willis Thomas and Mass Design Group called The Embrace. And so this picture was the inspiration for The Embrace, and we'll see some renditions in a few minutes.
So Amari, I want to interrupt you. I'm going to ask Sarah to stop screen sharing what we have and go back and open another file. It seems like something happened in the import, but we have your file, so she's going to share her screen with the proper slides.
Okay, sounds good.
Sorry about that. It's not them.
No worries.
It's definitely not them at all.
Is this where you'd like to restart?
Yeah, Sarah, go back one slide.
Certainly.
Okay. And then I think this is where we are, and then let's go forward one. And so as a part of the process, we knew that it was not, in this moment in time, as we've seen in other cities like New Orleans and Richmond, it is no longer appropriate for stone and steel to be the only representation of these great men. This idea of monuments being static is no longer appropriate in a modern society. And so when we thought about what it meant to build a memorial for Dr. and Mrs. King, as well as honoring other civil rights leaders, that we knew that those values needed to be backed up with action. And so part of that action is the triple threat of King Boston, one of those things being the King Center for Economic Justice. And so our plans immediately following the unveiling of the Embrace is to move forward and secure a place for the King Center. So here's a couple of artist renditions of what it might look like. And so the King Center will focus on 4 things. So the original 1965 King March for 4 issues. In those days, they referred to it as poverty. We're talking about redefining wealth for communities of color, housing, which was problematic in 65 and still remains a challenge, racial equity, which was problematic in that time and again, still remains a challenge across the country, and public education. So this was the Louise Day Hicks version of Boston. And so while we're in a different place, Boston still has opportunities for growth in education. And so we've expanded our focus on education to not only K-12, but to K-16 to also include higher education. And because racial equity discourse has us separating pragmatism from feelings, we knew that there needed to be a stronger arts components, a stronger humanities components as a part of the Embrace. And so after, again, another 15 community meetings, Embrace Ideas was born. And so it is not only a way to unveil the Embrace in 2022, but it is an ongoing series of arts activities that engages community members in anti-racist discourse. And so Embrace Ideas includes Voices on King. And so you might have had an opportunity to see this on NBC on Dr. King Day. It was our visual essay. Embrace Ideas also includes Embrace Conversations. And so we've had a series of virtual conversations, our last one being in Black History Month with college presidents. And so it is an ongoing way to engage and interrogate racism through conversations and TED Talk style activities. Embrace Vibes. And so if you had an opportunity to tune in the last Friday of Black History Month, DJ Chubby Chub is our DJ in residence. And so we have an artist in residence program. It's on the next slide. And so music is an intimate part of anti-racism. And so Embrace Ideas, Embrace Vibes is a part of a way that we engage our humanities into anti-racist discourse. Our artists in residence. So each year we'll have 4 featured artists in residence, a poet, a DJ, a singer, and a graphic designer, graphic artist. And so we will be launching our artists in residence, our inaugural artists in residence in the next couple of weeks. And the Embrace Ideas Festival of 2022. And so when Boston opens up, when we are post-vaccine, and Boston says we are open for business with this, and it's appropriate to have this this view of the Embrace from the top view. I say that we, like Beyonce, we are putting a ring on it. We're putting a ring on the finger of Boston's oldest park to say that we are committed. We are in a marriage of anti-racism and equity. And so you can't have a ring in the shape of Dr. and Mrs. King's arms honoring other civil rights leaders if it's not backed by action, if it's not backed by values, if it's not backed by policy. And so the Embrace Ideas Festival is the culmination of Boston's opening, which will be made up of 150 other organizations that have roughly signed on to be a part of this, where we are defining Boston's values, especially on the eve of our 400th anniversary, which is 2030. And so by 2030, we imagine that Boston will move from being, I think someone mentioned it earlier, the 6th worst place or the unfriendliest place to the most friendly, most just place in the country. And so I thank you for the time, and I'm going to pass it on to my colleagues.
Thank you, Amari. I'm Jonathan Evans, principal with Mass Design Group. We are humbled and honored to be a partner with Amari and King Boston and this sort of noble mission to kind of bring this to fruition and sort of kind of make this happen. I think we feel a great responsibility to consider how our design for the site and the landscape really honors this artwork, contextualizes this artwork. I do want to sort of note that the site design is something that we want to talk through a little bit here, but it's really presented just for reference and context for the artwork itself. But I mean, I think ultimately the idea here, the opportunity to really kind of make a place in the common that respects the history and the flows of the park. This plaza specifically cited near the bandstand where King spoke in '65, and also sort of on access with the State House where he spoke as well on that visit. So really being very intentional with how we've positioned this story within the flows of the common as a whole. Next slide. And this map kind of shows that well. So again, you can see we're taking a similar, we are sort of referencing some of the other scales of other monuments in the common, and considering the siting and the location and the arrangement of the pieces of this plaza. Next slide. And here is an approach walking down Mayor's Walk facing, I guess that's facing east. I think we've been very mindful of the scale of the piece relative to the tree canopy. Really wanted to make you feel like it's nestled within the park. And I think certainly too with this approach, you can see the topography, how we're making a piece that essentially is embraced within the flows of the city and the flows of this park. And one thing we like too is, depending on your approach, the plaza and the sculpture, it's almost either somewhat hidden or kind of very much sort of standing proud and revealing itself. So that's something that we like based on the approach to the site from various sides of the city. Next slide. So we've been at this for a while. This is a previous plan from back in December. I think the next slide shows the more current plan we have now. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, I think one thing you can see as we're working through this, we have taken very considered measures to really refine the grading, refine the approach to this. I think formally you'll see the plaza is a circle, which again takes cues from the other sort of sculptures in the park. And I think we're also mindful of the approach. I think we were very excited about how you enter this plaza tangentially to the piece and sort of come around it before you kind of come in front of it. Next slide. Yeah, so this is to Amari's note, this is the ring they were putting on the common, the plaza circle. Again, it's a flexible space designed to accommodate gathering of various types and scales here, just to sort of, again, showcase the artwork. Next slide. One thing that we are also very mindful of as we develop the paving pattern of this is really how we can tell that story, not just of Martin and Coretta, but also then how do we kind of mention some of those other heroes that Amari referenced. Next slide. So what we have here is a constellation. You can sort of see it's called here the Peace Walk, kind of an inlay whereby we can sort of reference those names that Amari mentioned earlier of the sort of heroes of this march, of this movement in Boston. And having those have a similar material finish as the piece itself. Again, taking cues from the artwork and complementing the artwork with this landscape. Next slide. Again, so this is kind of an aerial view here. You can see the piece being lighted from below. Again, the bronze inlay for the names, as well as the quote wall behind on that sort of semicircular kind of wall bench element that has the quote from Coretta that also frames and kind of helps to ground this piece. Next slide. Again, here, so yeah, this is that moment I just mentioned here. This is the a kind of quote from Coretta about the sort of power of love to sort of create a sort of harness of movement. We think that was very, we were very excited about using a quote from Coretta to help kind of ground this piece. And again, as the design has evolved, we have consolidated a lot of other moves into one sort of singular form here. That is, again, this sort of quote wall backdrop off of one side. It also helps to sort of mitigate retaining and sort of bring you down into this space. And also from the inside, having a bench kind of seated element so that you can then sort of sit and also view the embrace. Next slide. Again, so this is a ground level view. You can sort of seeing across. You can see on the left side there, there's that quote wall, the embrace in the middle there. And then, yeah, next slide. You can see the bandstand in the back. And again, so our job is to really support and contextualize this great artwork here. And so certainly looking at the base conditions, one thing that we are developing is how we deal with the details around cane detection in a way, using tactile bumps as something that sort of provides that accessibility. but again, in a way that complements and is consistent with the spirit of the artwork. Next slide. Similarly, we're doing that with the lighting strategy as well. Again, looking at in-grade lighting, again, that can sort of very strategically located to really best accentuate the piece and really amplify its impact. And with that, I think that sort of, again, sets the table for what we as Mass Design Group have been doing to really kind of, again, amplify the work of this piece. And with that, I will turn it over to Hank Willis-Thomas to talk a little bit more about the piece.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Can't see you.
Hi.
Good.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for all of the effort you put into the future through your work as commissioners and city officials and community members and creative people. And this is a really exciting moment and opportunity for us in this project, which we've been working on diligently, sometimes walking backwards to get to this point where we feel really strongly and we believe that we have a broad base of support and agreement about the state of the sculpture and the progress we're making with all the elements of this amazing monument and memorial. I also wanted to shout out Commissioner Alvarez for the opportunity he gave me as a young artist to do a show in Boston, I think almost over a decade ago. And I was just thinking, wow, how far we've come and how grateful I am, because I think all of the work that we do, we always do together. And the way in which community kind of is literally what makes an artist's career is something that I think connects very much to all movements and especially, and I believe that the work of Dr. King and Coretta Scott King was actually creative work. They were clearly making the world through conceptual art in their collaborations with the community members that are being celebrated alongside them in this sculpture, in this space. But also, I wanted to think about the kind of the broader implications of this piece being, as Amari said, put here, being a symbolic site of American evolution, revolution, and I don't know another Lucian thing, but solution? I don't know. But really this idea that there's very few places that you can say people have been coming to and Americans, so to speak, for a certain kind of experience for 5 centuries. That's pretty amazing. And hopefully this piece will be contributing to that. And so I want to acknowledge that what we're doing here is making history in a historic place. And that's something I know none of us take lightly. I've been really enjoying also all of the other work of the other artists and architects who are presenting today. And I was thinking about my days as a commissioner for the City of New York and the Public Design Commission, and y'all made me kind of miss it. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know if there's ever been a time when this work is more important, you know, with, well, maybe when all those sculptures that are now being taken down was maybe as important, but we're actually getting an opportunity to really redefine and reinterpret and shape public life for a long time. And that's what I love about the center as well, and embrace ideas, is that we are not just putting a work of art, we're actually making a commitment, you know, through the ring that we're putting on it. But this, and at this time during a global pandemic where we've already broken the rules in order to just be meeting here, I think it's important that we, especially those involved in civic life, are actually constantly thinking about what needs to change in order for our work to continue. And That's a lot of what we thought about. Like, and I gotta say, this work is prophetic, not just the sculpture, but I'm saying the idea. And the public-private partnership has brought this to realities. This is going to be one of the first, if you all approve it, one of the first new post-uprising sculptures to address this conversation of what do we do? What does a 21st century monument look like? And so I don't know how you're going to vote. I know what I would do, but I just feel like this is pretty exciting. And I don't know if we're right, but I do know it feels good. And I think it feels good because of all the love that's been put into making this happen. And I wanted to also acknowledge James Reeve, one of the fallen civil rights activists from Boston who just 55 years ago, 2 days ago, was one of the people who lost their lives around this movement, which Martin Luther King also joined in Selma, Alabama. And thinking about what happens in Boston and has happened in Boston being something that has ripples around the world throughout time is something that we also think about. And then lastly, I believe that all of us have changed who we are radically in the past year. And in looking at this and seeing Amari and Jonathan speak about it, was thinking about the last time I embraced my grandmother. And I wonder how many of you all have missed embracing someone or maybe lost the last chance to embrace someone. And so during this period, and so this sculpture actually will have new meaning post-pandemic because it's also largely a prohibited act at this time, and something that I think many of us will reconsider forevermore what it means to embrace and the joy and the opportunity that we took for granted so long. So I'll leave it there, but I just wanted to say thank you all. Thank you to Mass. Thank you to Sam and Chris and the entire BAC community for making this dream come true. And King Boston and the Boston Foundation.
Thanks, Hank.
Is anyone else speaking from the Embrace team?
Yes.
Okay.
So Sam Giarratani and myself will be speaking, and we can
Awesome.
go to the next slide. It shows a really beautiful nighttime view as well. The sculpture will be very much alive at night. My name is Chris Collins, and I'm with MGAC. We're a project consultant working on this. It's a great honor and privilege to be here today and to be working with Hank and Sam and everyone on this project, King Boston and the Boston Foundation. If we go to the next slide, we have been working diligently since our last meeting, and thank you for your feedback in our advisory back in December. So we did receive a written feedback, and we just wanted to hit some highlights today, as well as just kind of refresh on the fabrication and installation plans that are in our minds ready to go, and we're hoping to get approval today as much as possible. So we will talk today about the public entity reviews, where we are with that. Making good progress on that. We're going to talk about fabrication installation plans. We'll review that. We will also cover the archival documentation of the fabrication process. And really that's just something that we'll take care of. We're prepared to do once we get into a fabrication contract for the next work. That will definitely be part of something we take great care to keep. We'll go through the on-site welding and finishing plan question that we had, and talk about the patina maintenance and give a schedule update. Next slide, please. So as far as the public entity meetings and reviews, we've gone through the three major ones have been the Landmark Commission. Just as a refresher and reminder, it's been a very complex process to get through here, but I think right now, as far as getting through the Landmarks Commission, we had advisory review with them. Parks and Recreation, those have been many meetings review, and the 90% review is pending at this time. That will be coming up shortly. And then, of course, the Boston Art Commission, we had an artwork preliminary design review approval 11 months ago at the very beginning of this pandemic, and an advisory review in December. Next slide, please. So this is, we've just put a few slides in of the fabrication installation plans that we went over last time again. But just to let you know, there are some things that we will need to work out as we move forward as far as the timing of the installation relative to the site contractor schedule. There are some variables here with the size of the cranes required, coordinating ingress and egress for the site. All of that and timing of the placement of the pavers after the artwork will be done. I think the sculpture will be installed at a point where much of the construction will be done, and then the pavers will come in after that. The sculpture is installed. We also have to confirm access for the sculpture with that future site contractor for main lifts, shooting boom forklifts, generator, air compressor, and welder. So there will be some equipment out there that will take about a 2-week period to install the work. And of course, we still need to go through some relevant requirements regarding particular standards and protocols by the site contractor in the city of Boston. But again, I think we have a good plan. We're ready to go. Thank you. On the next slide, we have just a reminder that the engineering has been complete for the project. Fabricator has studied how they would like to make the piece, put it into pieces. There's an interior internal armature of stainless steel that will be supported and installed. Next slide, please. The shipping for the artwork will be done in basically 3 trucks. Those are all set up to not have an escort, and the sizing is appropriate on some lowboys, so those can be pulled in one at a time for the staging. Next slide, please. And the site contractor will actually be building and preparing the foundation for the artwork. So the fabricator will bring out some templates that they'll use in the shop to prepare the artwork and make sure that they can then drill the dowels and set the anchor bolts onto the foundation prepared by the site contractor and start installing the piece. Next, please. As I said, the engineering has been completed here. We figured out the internal armature and how it connects to the artwork to present very little stress on the actual bronze and connect the artwork at the site. So all the welding will be done and finished and patinaed on site where the connections are made. Next slide, please. As far as the install procedure, the fabricator will build the internal armature inside of the bronze. The pieces are cast in roughly 3 foot by 4 foot sections and then welded into the larger sections you saw a minute ago with the internal armature, and then those will be welded together, finished, and patinaed at the site where those connections are made. Next slide, please. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Sam.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. And just a note on the last slide, we're also talking about making sure that we document the entire process and share it for archival purposes. So we took that note from our last advisory meeting and just wanted to make sure that that was heard. But I'm Sam. I am a Revere, Mass born, now Brooklyn resident, and I'm grateful to serve as an artist representative for Hank, to be working with Amari and Jonathan and Chris. I work at Songa and Company, which is a company for all of Hank's public art, and it's named after his cousin Songa, who tragically passed to gun violence. So I'm extra grateful and honored to be working on these projects in his name as well. And I liaise between Hank's Art Studio and our fabricators and our vendors. And I've been building this knowledge of both material and process through our ongoing relationships with fabricators and vendors. So in this slide, you can see that as conceptually approved, our Embrace sculpture will utilize a warmer honeycomb patina that refers to the bronzes in the park, but also is able to retain its own identity. And to refresh, a patina is a thin film of color that is created when the heat and the chemicals are applied to the surface on the bronze. And they can be applied through a cold or a hot application process. But either way, that application comes, it creates colors that is a result of the chemical and the reaction on of the chemical on the copper. Through our preliminary conversations with foundries, we determined that perhaps we could use a hot application of the ferric nitrate over the bronze. But of course, any further on-site application would need to be determined once our fabricator is contracted and released. And on this slide as well, you can see some pictures of samples that a fabricator has shared with us and we've shared with you before. But the photo labeled number 2 is an actual sample that we received from a fabricator and shared with the BAC, I think in early February. So you should be able to hold that, COVID, you know, respectfully. But yeah, that's our bronze sample. And that is a photograph. You can see the bronze reacting to the direct sunlight. So you can see it sort of what it looks like in the sun. Next slide, please, Sarah. So we've selected this type of bronze in the patina so that it could be a refreshing aesthetic, but it's also very easy and durable to maintain from a conservation standpoint. And this is a letter from Daedalus, who's a conservator from Watertown, Mass. And they've done extensive bronze conservation work and work in the park specifically, including maintenance work on the Brewer Fountain. And as we requested, they gave us some preliminary thoughts on best approaches to the overall maintenance of the sculpture. Next slide, please. I just pointed out here from the letter, because it might not be as readable in the last slide, but Daedalus has suggested that the BAC consider the first year of maintenance as a trial basis to be confirmed after the first year and adjust the maintenance regimen as needed. And that's based on environmental conditions. But because we anticipate a lot of visitor interaction and we endeavor that this sculpture age elegantly and looks good over time, this initial consultation suggests a biannual maintenance campaign. So Daedalus suggests that we dedicate the first maintenance trip of the year to focus on documenting, washing, and cleaning. And then in the second trip, it would be dedicated to the surface repair, which would be coating repair or patina repair as needed. And because this is a preliminary estimate, we are definitely going to work closely with the BAC, with the fabricator, and the conservator to develop an annual maintenance plan in the next phase of work. Next slide, please, Sarah. Thank you. Go ahead, Chris.
Great. And as far as schedule, we just wanted to give you a quick update there. The major milestones we see in the project and the life of the sculpture here we're talking about today. So hopefully with a review and authorization today, the final review, we can begin, probably a few weeks to finalize everything on the contracts and get people going. It's a 17-month process for fabrication from the word go, the first payment to the time when they show up to install the artwork. So in the meantime, like we said, the approval of the plaza and the construction of the plaza, the bidding, all that can be coordinated and ongoing with parks. Tentatively, the site work construction would start up in the fall of this year. And then in September of 22, the artwork will be done and shipped to the site for a 2-week install period. And there are probably several weeks of work after the general contractor is complete with the rest of the site work before it's open to the public. So that concludes our presentation, I believe. Even have a thank you slide. And this time we actually found the artist, thanks to Amari, Simone Martin Newberry, who did that beautiful painting. So thank you.
And thank you, that was lovely. And I love this painting, by the way. Great. Well, I would love to open up the floor for the commissioners who might have some additional questions or comments to make.
Can I add here, Ikwa, that we had previously voted on this artwork by Hank Willis Thomas and Mass Design Group as part of the project's development, and that at this time, through the development and the evolution of the project, we are looking at the sculptural aspect, the bronze aspect in particular, by Hank Willis Thomas. So although we had that initial vote that spoke to the whole greater vision and the memorial, that today it is more sensible for the project overall to look at the sculpture by Hank Willis Thomas.
Thank you, Karen.
Hi, Sam and Chris. Thank you for that. With Karen's thoughts in mind, I was able to drop by her house and look at the sample that you provided, which was great. I think the color is fantastic and will look exceptional on the common. The one question I did have was, in looking at that sample, it had already been scratched. And I was wondering if in your conversations with Daedalus about maintenance and repair, or perhaps in any conservation work you had done in tests with that patina, if you're confident that if the material is scratched, it can be buffed out, or what kind of a process for repair and maintenance that you feel confident could keep the sculpture over time.
Sure, and it is a 1/4 inch thick bronze, so it's a solid material, of course, so it should be able to be repaired in the field, and having a conservator that will be able to do that. I don't know, Sam, if you want to add anything else to that.
Yeah, so part of the work in developing a relationship with the fabricator, we're also going to develop the relationship with the conservator. And so we are fully aware that this is going to be a high traffic area, that things are going to be touched and scratched, and we are definitely going to make decisions that allow for a quick and easy buff and also an easy coating application. So depending on what type of, if it's a wax or if it's a different type of application, we're definitely going to keep that in conversation. So thanks, John, for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Sam.
Yeah.
Was anyone else able to look at the sample today? I was able to see it. I would just say initially it seemed dark, but then I saw how the sun was reflecting off of it as we were standing outside, and I thought that's going to be a very, very nice effect on this metal.
Awesome.
Yeah. Wow, we're all speechless. That's a good sign, I think. I'll give it a few more minutes, and then we can open up to the rest of the participants of the meeting. So we're open for comments, suggestions, questions. We're looking at the artwork and hoping to take a vote on the final design of the artwork today. So is there anyone in our audience that might like to say a few things? Wow. I'm going to count to 30. But I think that just reflects, you know, all of the wonderful work that's gone into this project and the community process, which was awesome, that we would get to this point and everybody would be quiet. So I would entertain a motion to accept this final design for the Embrace to be at some point in the hopefully nearer future than 2022. I want to live to see this, you know, but if not, then 2022 is acceptable. I'd entertain a motion that we accept this final design so that folks can get on with putting this out into the world. Do I have a commissioner who's ready to do so?
Okay, Aqua, I move that we approve this proposal and continue with the, I guess it's the fabrication of the Embrace.
Can I just add the, can we add, because the language in the MOU and the deed of gift isn't finalized, can we make that motion, you know, assuming that there's no major changes to the MOU language, or I guess to the project overall, right? We're approving things, and if there was a big change in something as you move forward with fabrication, that would require coming back to the Art Commission. I'm not sure if someone has a better way of phrasing that than what I just did.
So with Kara's addendum.
Sorry, can we bring up the
It's
motion
the-
document, Sarah? That we try to capture these as we go. So I think it might be helpful to do that.
Okay, so the motion, Lisa, do you want to repeat your motion with Kara's addendum? Oh, I can't hear you.
Lisa, you're still muted.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I move that we approve final design for the Embrace pending that all of the concerns addressed in the MOU are taken care of and that there are no drastic changes, at which time design would come back to the commission. You want to add something else, Kara?
No, I think that I just wanted just some things to acknowledge that those documents aren't final. So I know we're still going back and forth on some little pieces, and it seems like everything is, you know, going in the right direction and there's agreement on everything, but just since it's not inked, it would be great to have that in there.
I apologize. Can we say that one more time a little bit more slowly?
And the concern I think that we had is that the MOU and the Exhibit A, the deed of gift in particular, are under consideration still, and so that it's that we look at all of this, including the MOU and its exhibits, as part of this vote that would come back, I think, if there were significant changes to them as currently proposed.
Patricia, are we waiting for you or are you waiting for us?
Go right ahead and with the motion. Sorry.
Okay.
So Karen, what was it pending that the MOU and what was it?
I mean, what I recommend you
exhibits.
consider, yeah, and its exhibits as currently drafted or substantially similar, and that if there are changes, that they would come back.
Okay.
Trisha, after MOU, can you add and its exhibits?
Mm.
Patricia, no pressure. We're all watching you type and spell check.
Right.
No pressure.
It's such an elegant artwork, and like between like the tech problem and just like watching each other, it's all very human. It's fine.
Does this cover Lisa?
Can you
and
add
Laura?
substantive? I think that there are any substantive changes, because we do understand that there'll be some tweaking.
I think there may be a word missing.
Hey,
Pending
guys,
that,
the MOU and its exhibits as currently drafted are accepted, and if there are any substantial changes, they would return to the BAC for further review, something like that. Sound good?
Yes.
All right, Lisa, on the mic.
No, all right, team.
Can I second?
Yes.
Was that you, John?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. So we have a motion put forth and accepted. I'm going to do the roll call now. And when I call your name, give your response. Starting with you, Lisa Tung.
Yes.
Michael Canizo.
Yes.
Robert Freeman.
Yes.
Brian Hone.
Yes.
Camilo Alvarez.
Yes.
John Andres.
Yes.
And I'm not calling on Mark. So all in favor, it looks like the motion passes, and congratulations to everyone involved. It's a wonderful journey and it's going to get even better. So all in favor said aye. Bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, what is left on our agenda?
Hey, April, can you call in Cara too?
Oh, I'm sorry. Cara,
Cara, we love you. We love you.
I'm going by this on the side here. Cara, I'm sorry. Forgive me.
That's okay. It's an enthusiastic yes from me also.
Awesome. All right, folks. I apologize for that. I think we are at the end of our presentations, which were all wonderful. Just going over the agenda here. Right. So if there's nothing else, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
I move to adjourn.
Seconded.
Okay, great. Thank you all for a wonderful meeting, and we look forward to seeing you in the future as things develop.
Thank you all.
I know.